Now it is time to buy VPS. VPS, as we said before, was the virtual private server. Again, your own piece of internet real estate, the place we can do wherever we want. I like the VPS because, or the concept of the VPS because it's a wide open field. It is a blank canvas. We can make it to be whatever we want, but essentially we're just buying a server. So to buy a server, we're going to open our browsers and we're going to go to digitalocean.com. If you use that link, you get some credits. I get some credits. We're all happy. It's the lesson learned from previous courses where I did not do that. I lost a lot of credits. But click on that link instead of going directly to DigitalOcean, and I will. You get free credits to run your server, which is great. So it won't cost you any money in the short term. And generally, these servers run about $5 a month or so. So don't worry about the costs running up, but make sure you shut down your servers after, because that'll get you too. I paid that one. So I'm going to navigate to digitalocean.com. And I already have a login, so I'm just going to log in. So generally, we're going to create a new project. You can call it whatever you want. And the purpose, it doesn't really matter, but we'll say class project educational purposes. That way we'll get a pretty broad, a lot of help, make the UI a little bit simpler. And description if you want. I created one called Full Stack for Frontend 3 and for class educational purposes. I'll move really slowly. The reason why we're using DigitalOcean and not something like AWS, AWS is much more complex. It has probably a broader suite of offered services that you can do. But for the purpose of this class, we don't need any of those things. We don't need to set up Route 53 or a bunch of EC2 instances, things like that. And guess what? Is there a course on AWS on Frontend Masters? You bet there is. There's a course on AWS. So if you really want to get good, there's an entire course talking about the tools and the procedures you use to set up AWS environments. So if you want to dig in there, I like DigitalOcean. They have really great tutorials. A lot of what we're going to cover today, you could probably look up and see some of their tutorials on DigitalOcean. The UI is very friendly. You're probably not going to shoot yourself in the foot, which is possible pretty easily when you're creating a server or even modifying a server. DigitalOcean does a pretty good job on that. And no, I'm not sponsored by DigitalOcean. I like their UI for creating servers. So we need to create a server. We're on DigitalOcean. So let's go to create. And DigitalOcean calls them droplets. DigitalOcean, droplet. Yeah, you see where it's going. AWS calls them EC2. Yeah, not as interesting. That's AWS versus DigitalOcean. But let's create a droplet. So let's click the droplet. So next, let's pick our region. So why does the region matter that we pick? Why would it matter? Yes?
That helps determine where you're going to serve the website from.
Yeah, exactly. We want to know where we're serving from, so we're developing on that, but we also want to know where our visitors are coming from. So we always want the closest region to where we think our visitors are going to be, not necessarily where we're developing from, unless it's just a development server. In that case, put it closer to where all the developers are. I live in California. I live in beautiful Oakland, California, so I'm going to pick San Francisco as the closest droplet location. New York is generally a good choice for East Coast people and in general. In the concept of AWS, they have different regions. They have US East 1, 2, they have US West 1, 2, et cetera. And at least at Netflix, we use all of the regions. So we have servers available in all regions. And generally, if you're creating a high-scale web application, you're going to have servers in all the regions around the world. And you rely on load balancers and really good routing to direct your users to the right place. But for this class, pick the one that's closest to you in your part of the world. Next, I'm going to choose the data center. And it doesn't really matter in this case. I'm just going to say SFO 01. Totally fine. And look, DigitalOcean, they even have a tip here. Just what I was saying. Select the data center closest to your users. See, that's why we use DigitalOcean. Little helpful tips like that. Now it comes time. Now it gets serious. Region, totally easy. We can pick another region. Operating system, the OS you have to live with. You can't easily switch OSs once you start developing on one. So we want to be really considerate about what we're going to choose here. We're going to choose Ubuntu, and we're going to choose the LTS version and the 64-bit LTS version. And let's talk about that here, because the OS is actually fairly important. Like I said, Ubuntu, the most common one. And LTS stands for long-term support. And that's the one you want running on your server. If you're going to go through the trouble of buying an operating system, putting all these hours into developing an application, you want to make sure it's on the LTS and not something that's on the bleeding edge. It's really tempting to be on the bleeding edge, but you have to think like an enterprise software developer, which is it good to be on the bleeding edge? No, because there's bugs, there's things that people haven't encountered. You want the most recent, but the slowest, most stable version you can get for your operating system. That's always the rule when you think about enterprise computing. You're welcome to choose something more on the bleeding or close to the more recent version, but always stick with LTS. I'm just going to say that's a pretty good rule, unless you really need the latest version.